Pokemon has announced their next main series game, Pokemon Legends ZA. You could call me an artist, and I've been drawing a bunch of creatures to the point that I'm making my own creature collector. But today we'll not just go over who might be the starters of Legends ZA, but also what they might look like through drawings that I made. In fact, the last time I did something like this was after the Paldean starters were revealed, where I quickly drew these. I got the types right at least. Ironically, I spent the least time on the Spanish banded Bandogato, but I think they ended up being the most accurate. Anyways, Legends ZA isn't about Paldea. It's about Kalos, specifically one city in Kalos, Lumiose City. And these were first introduced in 2013 with Pokemon 6th generation X and Y. So why are people even wondering what the starters will be? Well, because it's a Legends game, the second one Pokemon has ever announced. And last time, in Legends Arceus, despite the area geographically being the Sinnoh region, the game used completely different starters. Mind you, we only have one Legends game to work off of, and a lot of these quote-unquote patterns and rules fans would talk about might easily break in the next release. Pokemon has broken rules many times before. Okay, but why are the starters a big deal? They're not completely new Pokemon. Don't we already know what they grow into? The answer is that we don't, as Legends Arceus offered new designs with new typings to excite the player when they fully evolved their starter. The new designs were regional forms of what the starter previously evolved into. So, knowing that Pokemon can always break any of these previous conventions, let's start this discussion as if we follow Legends Arceus' patterns to a T. You might have heard some of these before, but stick around because some of these I might not agree with. Wink wink. Starting off with how the starters wouldn't be from that region. Alright, so no Colosseum starters. Next, the next Legends game wouldn't repeat any of the starters from the last Legends game. I agree, because if they do, then that's clear favoritism right there. Similarly, a rule I see thrown around is that the latest generation of starters are also ruled out. But why? Now, it's very important to ask why a rule or a pattern would make sense, because if the only reason is formality or convention, well, that could be broken easily. See if there's a thread of logic you could agree with before continuing. So with this rule, I'll go off on a limb and say, well, maybe since people have already played with the latest generation recently, if one of the trio overlapped with them, they would specifically feel more familiar than the other two do. So alright, no starters from the last generation because they're too familiar. And lastly, Legends ZA gave us a hint of what would be in the game: Mega Evolutions. Back in 2013, the Kalos region introduced players to Mega Evolution, where a specific marvel allows certain Pokemon to achieve a new form with beefed up stats and sometimes with a new typing and or ability. Of the starters, all Generation 1 and 3 starters have Megas, so it feels unlikely that only some of the Legends ZA starters already have a Mega while others don't. So that knocks 6 more starters out, which is tragic because I think I would have loved to see a Colosseum Blaziken. So this is what we have left. Now, a popular choice in the community was to pick starters that already reference Franks, like Serperior and Empoleon, and also Cinderace tagging along because of football. I won't lie, I love this group. But I must ask, how would they change in Legends ZA? When Legends Arceus brought over new starters, the starters evolved into new regional forms that reflected older Japan. If French-inspired starters come to French-inspired Kalos, would they become more French? What does that entail? Or would they become French in a different time period? Here's my first controversial spin on the matter. Many people are speculating that Legends ZA takes place in the late 1800s, referencing Haussmann's renovation of Paris. And since Legends Arceus was in the past, Pokemon fans are expecting this to take place in the past as well. But what if it wasn't? I've been convinced that the trailer at least doesn't depict only the past, as one of the townspeople are on their smartphone. Additionally, there's a lot of futuristic neon imagery in the trailer. For now, especially because of the smartphone lady, I think Legends ZA might take place at least in modern times. But what does that mean for the starters' regional forms? Well, this is where things start to fall into place. What if this is why the future Paradox Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet had such a cohesive art style? So that other games can reference the future without looking like a future Paradox Pokemon. And before I even thought about this game's time period, I was looking for French inventions to draw these regionals. And in 1915, French engineer Georges Claude patented the neon sign. Neon lights. Lumio City. A city of lights. Feasibly, any Pokemon before Generation 6 have already been in Kalos and didn't grow up into a new regional form. But what if instead, in this new modernized Lumio City, they can achieve new Lumiosian forms? Starting with Serperior. Their hood illuminates a fleur-de-lis pattern, while their head is smoother to reference Italian-born French naturalized Pierre Cardin, specifically his space-age fashion. The hood also gives them a hacker kind of look. But yeah, all regional forms changed typing to further distinguish themselves from the previous version, so I'm calling this a Grass Steel type. Next comes Empoleon, where their fins can extend and retract energy swords. While I love the trident face, I thought it would look too similar to Sinnoh and Empoleon, so instead they have a cyber helmet, like the French electronic musicians Daft Punk. And lastly, I made their tux show a vague Eiffel Tower, where in Pokemon they have Lumiose Tower. Instead of Water Steel, they are now Water Electric type. Lastly, with Cinderace, I immediately thought of Tron, and while Tron is an American film, roller skating was popular in France. Well, also in the United States, but Pokemon also had a Kalos gym based on a skate park. Now, that gym was a fighting type, but I don't know if fans are still tired of firefighting types, so why not call this Cinderace our first Fire Fairy, as they leave a trail of light behind? Alright, so it seems that we found a way to make the fans' most popular guests to work out. I suppose my work here is done. I'll get my coat and take my leave. But, just one more thing. Now, some of the in-game dialogue of Legends Arceus explain how the starters you choose from aren't actually native to the land and are brought in by Professor Laventon. Ecologically a terrible thing to do, Professor. However, lore-wise, that is how the player could get access to any Pokemon in the first place. Because Legend Arceus takes place in the past, a time where people of the area mostly feared Pokemon. That's why while the Sinnoh starters were still in the game, they were canonically too strong and wild at the time to be caught and raised. But for Legends ZA, if the game takes place in the modern day, or even in the future, would any of that lore apply? Even if it's in the past, do you think Pokemon wants to tell the same story of people getting over their fear of Pokemon again? Of course, new lore could be made, of course. But let's take a step back. Why did Legends Arceus even try to have different starters? Well, it's a new experience with new regional forms, but why can't regional forms be applied to the Sinnoh starters? Is it truly only the lore holding it back? Or, let's take one more step back to see a bigger picture. While remakes of Generation 4 games were made to remind people of Sinnoh's map, people, and lore before referencing all of them in Legends Arceus, maybe Legends Arceus had different starters because people already played with the Sinnoh starters just a few months prior in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. This is similar to why starters from the latest generation weren't chosen. Playing another game with the same starters might feel redundant, even if the starters ended up with new designs. Now, with Legends ZA, we didn't get any announcement for X and Y remakes. What if we never get them? Then does the rule still make sense? Remember, Legends Arceus is just one game. Do we truly know there's a pattern here? It's a shot in the dark, but what if? I think Legends ZA might take place at least in modern times. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Would any of that lore apply? Mega Evolution. It's very important to ask why a rule or a pattern would make sense, starting off with how the starters wouldn't be from that region. But what if the starters were from that region? Despite the Kalos region introducing Mega Evolution, the only Pokemon of that region who got one was Diancie. Sure, maybe Megas are just for referencing older Pokemon and giving them a new look. But that didn't stop fans from wanting Megas of the Kalosian starters. Ash Greninja, get that hairy frog out of here. I'm talking about true Mega Evolutions, and if we'll ever get to see them, now's the chance. What if Legends ZA was served without a remake? If so, having the same Kalosian starters would rather be welcoming, as people haven't played with them as partners for over a decade. Alright, so what would they look like? That's a task easier said than done. Many people have made their own Mega designs of these guys over the years, but I'll try to take a stab at it. Mega Chestnut. First thing I noticed about this guy is that this guy's round. What if they can now become a full ball and roll around? The spikes get in the way, but I'm imagining something more like the Bionicle Thornax shape. I would change their typings, but this trio already has a beautiful type triangle, so I just changed the abilities. Abilities are crucial in defining Megas, so it's hard to imagine Megas without them, even if this is a Legends game. So here, it could be Stamina. I mean, it'll be busted as heck. Stab, Stamina, Body Press. Oh no. I mean, Bulletproof still works fine here, but who knows? A bunch of Megas are busted. Mega Delphox. Most of the designs turn to stick into a staff, so here they have a witch's broom instead. For the witch's hat, I suppose that the ears would already shape the tall part of the hat, so only a few tufts are needed to realize a brim. Frankly, I feel like they could get a better ability than Magician, so maybe they get Magic Guard. Finally, Mega Greninja. What's the most memorable part of Greninja? The tongue scarf. What if it went around in a spiral like a vortex? I also noticed just how Greninja is all about these teardrop shapes. A teardrop body, teardrop thighs. So why don't they throw out teardrops? Their tongue also now ends with a teardrop-like bulb. So yeah, Protean is a great ability already, but if they get another, I don't know, maybe they get Drizzle, because that's the only weather setting ability that wasn't given to a Mega yet. So who do you think would be the starters in Legends ZA? Are we getting regional forms for new starters, or are we getting Megas? Comment below. At the end of the day, I still got to share some of my art with you. If you enjoyed this discussion, I got a lot more art and videos in the works about Legends ZA, so come over and subscribe. In the meantime, if you like my art, I have a whole video series going over my independent creature collector based off of STEM topics, which I'll still be working on in the future. A special thank you to my Patreon supporters for their direct support, and finally, thank you for watching this video. See you next time.